So this is basically nothing. I just wanted to put my thoughts out there, I guess. Just recently finished Fallout 4. I'm considering it finished anyway. Because I got partway through the Nuka World DLC, and we'll get to my point about that eventually. But I just wanted, I guess, to state my opinion about this fucking, 8-year-old game, I think, at this point. Because I just finished it, and that makes it relevant. First thing I wanted to talk about that I really don't see a fucking point for is Radiant quests. Now that terminology doesn't mean anything to anyone, so I will explain that what that is basically just a quest that's infinitely repeatable, which, by the way, the Fallout Wiki is wrong about what is and isn't a Radiant quest, because there are certain quests where if you do them enough times, they stop appearing. So that's just straight up incorrect. That's great that you need to use outside resources for basically anything in a Bethesda game, and the outside resources aren't correct. But regardless of that, the idea of Radiant quests is that in Fallout 4, there are different factions, and you can repeat quests from them. My reasoning here is that that's just worthless and that doesn't do anything. If we think back to I'm not going to talk too much about Fallout 1 or 2 because I didn't really play them to the extent. I played 3, New Vegas, and now 4. At least in 2, you had karma, and karma affected a lot of things. Who you decided to help would make adjustments to your karma, and that had this big impact on who would talk to you, what quests you could get. I think it affected prices at vendors too, but that might have just been charisma, I'm not sure. Regardless of that, in 3 they have karma again, and it's functionally worthless. It affects what companions you can have with you. I think that's about it. And then they really double back on themselves because the very last decision in the main story that you make either sets your karma to positive 9,999 or negative 9,999. So basically nothing you did up to that point is even all that effective and doesn't matter. New Vegas is a lot better about that, as New Vegas is better about most things in the entire Fallout series, in that your karma still doesn't affect that much, but it will change your endings no matter what. You can do the same exact action twice, once with good karma and once with bad, and it will have an entirely different outcome in the ending slides you get. Fallout 4 doesn't have karma at all, and I might say that doesn't really matter because they weren't using it anyway. It also doesn't have faction reputation though. So in New Vegas, basically the majority of quests you do have some sort of effect on how different factions or how the town you're in sees you, and that has a direct impact on things. If it's too low, you can get aggroed a lot easier by things. And to be fair about Fallout 3's karma, if you have bad karma, it's there will be enemy spawns based on that. If there's good karma, there will be enemy spawns based on that. It's the exact same thing, they just changed the name. So still, it's not really doing anything, but it does have an effect, I guess. But yeah, Fallout 4 doesn't have that at all. Fallout 4 just has no karma, it has no faction reputation. So basically, you can do these Radiant quests over and over again, and you can be I really want to support this faction, I really hate this faction. You can fail 1,000,001 Brotherhood quests. There's repeatable Brotherhood quests that are failable, there's repeatable Institute quests that you can fail, and it has no effect on anything. Your standing with them isn't disgraced. Doing the quests properly doesn't make your standing any better. There is no real benefit to doing these quests. The only benefit I can think of for Radiant quests is it gives you experience, which you're already fucking flooded with anyway. If you're doing regular quests, there's no reason for you to do the exact same go find something or go kill something mission 20 times in a row to experience grind. And the currency you get out of it, the caps you get out of it, I think it's 100 most of the time, if that. Which it's okay, I can just I don't need that for one thing. You kind of acquire on site a lot of what you need. You don't need to be spending that much except for on ammo, and by the time that you have weapons that need those higher cost ammo types, 1, there's a bunch of perks to make them cheaper. 2, there's a bunch of other things you can steal, and again, there's no karma, so there's no reason not to steal. You can just take shit, you can sell shit, you can just it doesn't matter. There's no reason to do these quests. The only reason I can think of to do them would be because of companion affinity, which is something that in theory should be good, and Radiant quests in theory should be good too, because if there was still faction reputation, it would be a way for you to manipulate that, and it would be kind of a cheat out way of manipulating that, because in New Vegas, there are repeatable actions you can do, I believe, to affect main factions, but generally speaking, your affinity is kind of set by what you decide to do throughout the game. I mean, you get to the strip, and then it's Ave Kaiser, we have fucking decided that none of the shit you did up to this point matters, and you're back to neutral karma with the Legion, and it's okay, well, whatever, but still the things they do after that are still going to affect it, and it's at such a light point in the game if you're following the path that the game wants you to follow, that it's you probably already made your decisions on that regardless, and you're probably going to stick to that. I mean, it makes it easier for you to veer off if you want to veer off, because again, you can't you can't like just continue playing. Like when the game ends, it ends, and like there's certain lockout points where you can't make decisions anymore towards other factions. So it gives you a good late game point where you can restart things. But regardless, there is no need for something like that in Fallout 4 because there are points where you get locked in, and it doesn't actually tell you that per se. Essentially, certain actions you do are going to like, irreparably piss off the other factions eventually, but it's not super clear about when your cutoff points for that are, but so long as you don't go do stupid shit, it's probably fine, is what I discovered. But that was kind of a tangent in that we were talking about affinity. So when you're like stealing or doing these actions, depending on who you have with you, they might be like, oh, it's cool, you steal, I like that action, I'm going to give you +7 affinity. Or it's like, I cannot believe you would steal from someone, I'm giving you -7 affinity. And it's like, okay, I guess that's like there instead of karma, because it's not so much important, I guess, to Bethesda or maybe to the world around you. I guess I don't really know how I meant to interpret that in terms of narrative, the removal of karma, if I'm even meant to think about it. But I am meant to think about, like, I have these people around me and the things I do affect how they see me, and they're the ones who see me do it. So I guess in essence it makes sense if nobody saw me steal like 300 fucking cups to lower my karma in Fallout 3. So it's like, who's like reporting me? How do people know I did that? How do they know that I have negative karma? And I guess that's a point you can make. But the problem with that is Radiant quests, I feel like, because the caps don't matter, the rewards really don't matter, there's no affinity, there's no faction, reputation, it's to grind affinity, but it's like the worst way to do that. The majority of companions in the game, if you take like a Minutemen quest, which you're always going to fucking have on you, because every goddamn time you go back to Sanctuary, Preston's like, there's another settlement that needs our help. It's like, okay, cool. And that usually gives you like, I think that also only gives you like 7 affinity, and you need 1,000 to max it out. And it's like, that is not worth the time. The much more worthwhile thing to do is for like at least 3 or 4 of the companions, either lockpicking or terminal hacking, and then you just wait 2 hours. And like there's certain times where terminals are like tied to like a safe, and then what you can do is you can open the safe, and then you can use the terminal to relock the safe, wait 2 hours, open it again. You get 16 experience, so that's, I feel, a more worthwhile experience grinding Radiant quests. And you get, you know, the affinity bonus if you get an affinity bonus. So like if you're with fucking Strong, who's the worst fucking companion to deal with, you'll get, you know, negative affinity with him because you lockpicked. And it's like, I fucking love how Strong, by the way, holy shit, he hates doing anything useful. It's all like a negative reaction to him. If you want to speak to someone, or you want to like steal something, or you want to like pick a lock, which might be necessary to get through a fucking building, he'll dislike that. I hope you're ready to take the karma hit because you did something the game needed you to do that was really smart. And that's just, it's fucking stupid. And essentially, this really started, the reason I wanted to record this was as a rant about Radiant quests, because like, what was the point? Was there a point in development where there was faction reputation, and that's why these exist? Or why is it even a thing? Because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't accomplish anything. There's no reason to do them. There's a million different quests out there you can do that aren't repeatable. And like I said, you're gonna have enough experience and probably enough caps to like not need to do Radiant quests. Like there's not gonna be a point where like, I need to stop and do these repeatable quests for this thing or that thing. But like I was saying earlier, the wiki sometimes lists things as Radiant quests that aren't. The Railroad has a quest, basically. There's a quest line you have to do to get the Ballistic Weave, which is armor craftable upgrade. And it's like, oh yeah, that's a Radiant quest to lay out those satellites for the Railroad. No, it's not. After you've set out 9, it stopped giving me that quest ever, and I ended up siding with the Railroad. And they didn't continue to give me that quest ever. I never again was told to try and do that, no matter what point of plot I was at. And so it's funny to me that that's like considered a Radiant quest, because no, it's not. That's just a quest line that's incredibly repetitive and has one reward at the end of it that honestly I didn't even use, but theoretically is helpful. And another whole thing about these, the faction system, it's worthless. It does not matter. So it doesn't matter who you help, and for the large majority, it doesn't really matter who you like end up siding with. Basically, you can do every single faction quest up to like the last like 2 or 3. It kind of depends. And be fine between every single faction in the game. Like, you can be, on one hand, helping the Railroad, who's like trying to free these synths, and on the other hand, there's like the Brotherhood, and they're like, we need to like destroy them, they're fucking robots, whatever the hell, like all that shit, which is like, fucking, like, there's no moral grayness here. It's like, oh, these people are like terrible. It's like this whole like synths aren't people thing, and it's like, why the fuck do they have human emotions? And like, at what point do you like, that's dumb. It's dumb. The Institute is dumb for that. The Brotherhood's dumb for that. They're stupid routes. Anyway, My whole thing is like, you can make a big fucking super fucking fighting robot that was in Fallout 3 for the Brotherhood, and no one's going to say anything about it. And the Railroad's not even going to get mad. They're not even going to be like, why are you helping the Brotherhood? And the Brotherhood's not going to be like, hey, you just like disappear, and then like sometimes you sabotage our missions. The Institute says it once, then it doesn't actually matter at all, which is funny because like the Institute actively knows that you're like sabotaging them, but continues not to care until like the event horizon of when they no longer exist. But it's funny because, you know, in like Fallout 3 and New Vegas, and I'm pretty sure in 1 and 2 as well, and in most video games where your choices are supposed to matter, at the end your choices actually matter. Like, they'll tell you, like, this happened at this place because of your decisions, and this person went on to do this because of your influence on them. Fallout 4 doesn't even have that. And then it's really weird because you get to the end and it doesn't even feel like you've completed the game, because it's like 3 out of 4 endings you blow up the Institute, and it's like there's other shit that goes on, whatever, but that's basically the important thing. And then they're gone, and it's like, okay, I really want to know, because I got to the ending and I didn't know this before. I was like, I want to see how all the choices I made throughout the game impacted the world, and it does not tell you. It gives you nothing. You get a little cutscene where it's like, I went out there to find my son and try and get my family back, but I didn't do it. And now I have to live in this fucking wasteland. And it's like, all right, like, is that it? None of the decisions I made up to this point mattered at all. So again, it's like nothing I did. Like, it's really funny because, right, like, part of the Railroad quest is you have to like destroy the Brotherhood, and like the Brotherhood, like I built Liberty Prime and they didn't even use it. Like, it didn't even come into play. And it's like, well, I'm fucking destroying your mother base, and it's like, you're not even like sicking the big fucking robot I had you make on me. Like, what was even the point of doing that? Like, I thought it would be a more intense conclusion because of the fact that I played all sides. I thought like there would be like a punishment for that fact when you eventually choose one. But there's not. It's just like, it's worthless, it's flavor dressing, and then like afterwards it's like you can continue to do Radiant quests. And it's like, I just pointed out how worthless those are and how those feel like you don't affect anything, and how they don't have any worthwhile rewards. So you're telling me like basically the only difference basically is because I side with the Railroad, like the Brotherhood no longer exists. I can't do Brotherhood Radiant quests. And like if I'd sided with the Minutemen, I could do everyone's Radiant quests depending on how I went about that. And like if I sided with Institute, I could do like probably nobody's. I think you can do Minutemen still, depending on how you solve certain issues, but it's like it just kind of affects like a little bit of flavor dressing. Like once or twice when people reference like, oh, you're sided with this group, like you accomplished this, like in one line of dialogue from like one NPC. And it's like I get an equal amount of dialogue based on whether or not I'm wearing the Silver Shroud like equipment. So that doesn't really feel important at all. And so that's the thing, is it's just this flavor dressing, and it doesn't matter and doesn't mean anything. It has no actual implications for the world. You just continue to do Radiant quests like you were doing before, like nothing has changed at all. Again, especially if you side with the Minutemen and everybody's just kind of in this state of still being here. And it's like, what, it doesn't even matter. I think, okay, to be fair, I think you get like an exclusive weapon after the point of no return for every faction. I don't think that matters, because there's plenty of good weapons in the game that aren't the one they give you. Especially because I don't know if that's, again, I did Railroad ending, and I could research into the other endings, specifically what they give you. But I was going to originally, I had a save at the point of no return. I got to the very last step I could of every single faction, and I was going to reload that to see how all the endings were, but the ending is exactly the same every single time, just with slightly different, like, flavor dressing, like I said, like who's standing there. And I guess, to some extent, maybe how they feel about how you finish the final quest, I guess. I can't imagine it's really much, maybe like one line of like, oh, did you like give them the emergency, like, hey, get the hell out of their call or not. But it just doesn't actually matter, so I have no motivation to do that. And then the DLC as well, so like a lot of the DLC is worked into the main game, I guess for better or worse, because I found out this game has like 6 DLCs, and I have like the version of it that has all of them in there, and I obviously played it way after release, so I don't really have to think about that fact. But a lot of the quests I'm running into in the Commonwealth, like I don't even know their DLC, which I guess you could say is good proper implementation into base game, and on one hand that's good. On the other hand, I thought like Fall Harbor and Nuka World were the only DLCs because they have their own worlds and stories attached. And the Automaton DLC quest is like nothing. Like, these robot partners are like infinitely less important and less helpful than just having an actual like companion with you. Like, Ada doesn't have any affinity, and there's like a bunch of motherfuckers who have to raise their affinity, so it's like I'm wasting time by having her with me too. And there's some quest lines that are specifically added only if the DLCs are installed, which are cool, but like I couldn't tell you what they are because there's no marking of that anywhere. So then you like Fall Harbor and Nuka World. And Fall Harbor I did like partway through the story, and I actually think it's really good as a Fallout DLC. I think it's definitely up there as one of the better ones, surprisingly. One problem I have with it is like early on there, you're going to this like synth like base off on this island, and Dima, the leader there, basically is like, how do you know you're not a synth? And you can be like, oh my god, I think I might be a synth. I must be. It all makes sense now. And like you can have this big revelation, and normally in the game, when you make these kinds of decisions, it will to some degree affect some dialogue. Like, I'm trying to think of an example. Like the Silver Shroud's a really good one because that's a really good quest line that you can repeatedly get referred to. Like people are like, oh, he did this, he did that, or like she if you're like if you play as a female character, they just change the pronoun. That's all. Oh, did this, did that, Silver Shroud, and like you have all these lines. Like all these different people have this flavor dialogue for it. But what's interesting is like in Fall Harbor, you can be like, oh, I'm a synth. That makes so much sense. And it changes zero. There's zero dialogue changes to the entire game, including Fall Harbor itself, based on whether or not the main character now believes they're a synth. And the ironic thing about that is like, no, obviously they're not a synth. That's fucking dumb. It doesn't make any sense. How would he be a human genetic backup for like a pre-war person if they replaced him with a synth? That's stupid and it doesn't work. It doesn't make sense. No one would have any benefit to having done that because, like, again, the only people who knew he was there was the Institute, and it's actively not helpful to the Institute to have done that. But then again, like, the Institute has no idea what it's doing anyway, which is part of the problem with these factions. Is like, the Institute is supposed to be seen as like a factional choice you can make, and then like none of the things that it says makes any sense, and it's really unclear what they actually think at any given time. But regardless of that, it's dumb that you can decide to have your main character say that, and it ties into the fact that like the character who you came to Fall Harbor to find, like you can tell her, oh, like you're a human, you're not a synth. She's like, well, I guess we'll never know for sure. And it's like she is. The funny thing is, she is very obviously a human, because for one thing, if you kill a synth, or if a synth like dies, like they will have like little like it's like called the fucking synth component or something on them. She won't have one. If you ask the Institute about it, I know they'll say like if she's a synth, she's not one of ours. And it's like there would have been no reason also for this random girl on like this fucking like farm in the middle of nowhere to have been replaced with a synth. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't benefit the Institute. It doesn't benefit the railroad. It doesn't benefit like I don't think what the hell are they called, like Academia or whatever it's called, Acadia, that synth refuge. It wouldn't have benefited them to replace her because they didn't even know she existed until she came to them. So like there's no world in which it makes sense for either of these characters to be a synth, but both of them can decide that they are, and like Kasumi will always believe she is one regardless. And then like your main character, whether or not you say that he or she believes they're a synth, it again affects nothing, which it's funny too, because there's a whole, if you're on the Brotherhood of Steel route, and you get to like blind betrayal, like Elder Maxon is like, oh, you have to fucking sacrifice Dance because he's not a real person, he's a synth. And like you have no option to be like, well, I also am, and I'm really important to the cause, so like shut the fuck up. Like you have no option to do that. It doesn't affect anything. So it's like, why even let me make this choice? And again, it's this weird thing where there's all these like options that aren't actually options and don't matter and don't actually do anything for you. And I'm sure Fallout 3 and New Vegas had plenty of those too, in a sense, where they affected very little, but they usually had some effect. Like in Fallout 3, I remember one of the early decisions I made to try and lower my karma was like I told a bartender to go fuck off, and then he was like scared of me the entire rest of the game, and it changed the kind of dialogue that he had. And that's such a small thing, but it is an effort made based on a decision I made. And Fallout 4 has so little of that, outside of very specific examples, which I just feel makes it so it's like, why is there so little of this? Why does it feel so like half-baked that we don't have these systems of like tracking things or changing things that we normally would? Why does the ending not have anything to do with any of my actions regardless? Like we just continue going on doing Radiant quests, and really like the Wasteland barely changes. It's like, I think for me, like, oh, like Brotherhood Knights might show up to like be pissed off at me sometimes. It's like, this is the same as the fucking like good evil karma random bad guys who spawn in Fallout 3. It's like, it's no different, it's nothing new, and it's like, it's the least you could have possibly implemented to do anything. And even then, again, if like I sided with the Minutemen and kind of had everyone like on board, it's like, I presume maybe like Institute Coursers would still spawn, would maybe be the thing. I don't know, I guess. But even then, it wouldn't actually be different. Like the world doesn't change. I don't get told the world changed. There's no epilogue telling me about it. And you just continue playing like nothing happened, basically. Another problem too, I talked about affinity grinding earlier. It takes a really long time to get affinity up, and I don't think the game wants you to grind affinity, which is weird, because that's the only point I can see for Radiant quests, but I don't feel like they want you to grind affinity, and my point is because if you reach max affinity with a romanceable companion, and then you don't romance them, and you're saying, we are friends, and like, I agree, we are friends, every single fucking time that you run into them, or like if you have them as your active companion and you're on like your little adventures, they'll often stop you to be like, hey, just want to talk about like that big discussion we had at the end of my like companion storyline, where you had a chance to romance me. Do you like want to romance me now? And it's like, well, no, I made my decision not to do that. I don't want to be told every fucking 10 minutes or every time I see you at a settlement that you like want to fuck. Like, I'm not interested. I made that point clear. It's funny because like people complain like, oh, in Baldur's Gate 3, like everybody wants to fuck you, and it's like in Fallout 4, once they hit that affinity threshold, they will never fucking stop. There's no way to get them to stop asking about it, and like they will never have any other dialogue to say to you. Well, that's not entirely fair. Like you can still like do like your thoughts and like give the random like dialogue. But it's like every so often they just continue to do that, and it's obnoxious, and it makes me wish that I didn't max out like everyone's affinity, because there's just like 6 companions now who it's like I have to just avoid them like the plague, so that I don't have to have the same conversation 6 times where I like tell them I don't want to romance them. And I don't know if maybe the intent was maybe you're supposed to romance everyone, maybe that's what they want you to do, but it's like that is so stupid. There's no plot relevance to that, there's no thematic relevance to doing that, so I don't know why that would be the point. And also just in terms of your romance options too, I feel like that's something worth discussing and complaining about. I do not have a list in front of me of every single romanceable companion. This is very off the cuff, so I cannot tell you for sure, but it's like Kate, Curie, Hancock, Dance, and Gage, I believe, are your romance options. So it's like Kate and Curie are both like Kate has this really interesting storyline basically about like getting over her addiction and like trying to like find a reason to live again, and it's like it feels really in depth, and it's like romancing her feels like something that's like really, I guess I'd say it'd be like a very natural route to take with it, and I don't have any problems with it. I think she's a good character with a good story and like a good romance arc for that. Curie, I'd say, is fine. It's very much so like a robot learns human emotions, and like some people are down for that kind of thing, and like she's generally nice. I'll say if you actually look up what her likes and dislikes are, she's a little bit not like she likes to discuss rather than fight, but she doesn't like not everything she wants to discuss is morally good, which I think especially is interesting because like she has a lot of sympathy for the Brotherhood, it seems like, in some of her dialogue. She doesn't get affinity from their Radiant quests, but it feels like she sympathizes with them, which is weird because she's a synth and was a robot before that, so it's like that's not helpful to her own cause. Regardless, right, her whole thing is like exploring the world, learning emotions. It's like, yeah, okay, put a romance arc in there, sure, fine. Those two I think are good, and I don't have any problems with them. I think your male options fucking suck, like outright. So you have Paladin Dance, and problem 1 is he's in the fucking Brotherhood, which, like, there's active, like, Nazi allegories in there, if you're looking for them. Like, this whole idea of, like, oh, we don't see super mutants or synths as people, and, like, we keep them barely alive and run, like, fucking blood experiments on them. It's like, okay, dude, like, is it fucking, like, 1942? Like, what the fuck are we doing here? And that's, I have a big problem with, actually, the Brotherhood in Fallout 4. I have a big problem with the Brotherhood in general. I don't think they were portrayed bad in Fallout 4. I think they were portrayed bad in Fallout 3. Because the Brotherhood is normally, like, a bunch of assholes who actively are hindering everyone but themselves. Regardless of that, though, so Dance, you basically have to do things the Brotherhood likes and do, like, Brotherhood quests to get his affinity up. And his whole thing is, like, I love how committed you are to the Brotherhood. You are, like, a good Brotherhood soldier. And it's, like, very ironic because you have to basically go against, like, the core fucking, like, terrible tenets of the fucking Brotherhood to even romance him, because he gets capped at 999 affinity, which is one short of, the maximum, until you do Blind Betrayal, which is his personal quest and is also part of the Brotherhood questline, where basically you're supposed to, like, kill him because he's a synth, and, like, you can just choose to not do that. If you choose to not do that, I already had him at 999, so I don't know if he will just jump straight to idolizing you no matter what after that quest, or if you might still have to, like, adventure around with him for a bit. Regardless, at that point he's like, wow, you, like, did all that for me, you are my best friend ever, and, like, you can romance him, right? But then it's like, it's weird because if you don't side with the Brotherhood, or, like, if you pick a side that destroys them, which is 2 out of 4 at least, it's like 2.5 because Minutemen can do it too if you decide to have them do it, he's not even available as a companion anymore, and it's like your whole thing, you can't even go back. Like, they decided you're not a person and that nothing you did mattered, and, like, you're still upset with me because I didn't side with them. Like, if you bring him to the Brotherhood, like, they will aggro on sight, and it's funny because that doesn't make any fucking sense that his storyline is basically like, oh, actually the Brotherhood is bad and synths are people, but if you betray them, I'm not going to, like, be your friend anymore, basically. And it's like, that's fucking ridiculous and stupid. So that is a very flawed romance route right there. I have a lot of problems with everything about it, really. So it's Kate, Curie, Dance, you have Hancock. Hancock is like, I feel like he's maybe the best of the bad male options you have, in that, like, he is an asshole, but he has like a code to it. Like, he's very, like, I think he's meant to be like kind of chaotic neutral coded, I guess, to use like the fucking like 9 like sects of morality system, whatever that's actually called. But it's interesting, right? Because in your final affinity conversation with him, he says like, yeah, I like run away from everything all the time because I don't like responsibilities and I don't like being tied down. And like, you can say to him, one of the options you have is like, so how long do I have before you run away from me? And he's like, oh, you have a while. And it's like, that does not make me want to romance this character, because he just basically said like he's in it until he's not. And it's like, that is so worthless and not helpful. That's also like not getting over his like personal issue of running from things. He's just continuing to run from things with you because it's fun to do that with you. And that's crazy. That's stupid. It's like, again, comparing back to Kate, it's like beginning, middle, and end. To that storyline, it's interesting, it's good. Nick has, I think, a good storyline too with a beginning, middle, end. He would have been a better romance option overall to the base game, I feel, than like Hancock, or like than I feel like fucking Dance. Because again, like, Dance is like, he's also, you have to be doing Brotherhood shit, or like you cannot, you straight up, like, because if you don't get to Blind Betrayal, then he's like not going to be a companion anyway either. So he's locked to Brotherhood alignment, and yet like he's one of the romance options. And like, so your other option in base game is Hancock, or like McCready, who's like also, I honestly didn't finish, Preston and McCready actually are both romances. I didn't finish either of their affinities. Preston, because he's fucking obnoxious. I think that the meme is definitely true of like, that's great general, but there's another settlement. And it's like, his whole thing is just like, oh, he's being like a good guy and like he has good values. And it's like, that's also boring in almost the opposite direction of Hancock, where it's like, yeah, congrats, you have no flaws. Like, good for you, yay. I do not fucking like care at all. And then McCready, like, the only way to raise his affinity is just to be like an absolute asshole. And it's weird because because I got him to like affinity a little past 500, which is the point where you unlock basically like a midway conversation. People normally, some companions have conversations at like around 200 and then 500 and then at 1,000. Some only have one at like 500 and then at 1,000. Some have personal quests, some don't. And it's weird because McCready doesn't even really seem like that much of an asshole. But, like, the only way to raise his affinity is to do like dickhead shit. Like, you have to, it's weird, right? Because if you steal or like you pickpocket, his affinity goes up. But if you get caught pickpocketing, he hates that and his affinity goes way down. And it's like, so like, it's not the action itself that you like, it's me getting away with it that you like. And it's like, that's annoying from a gameplay mechanic perspective in a lot of ways to me, and is part of why I did not finish raising his affinity. But that's an issue I have with him, is like, he's just kind of an asshole, and everyone seems to know he's an asshole, even though he doesn't really, I don't feel like he acts like that much of an asshole. Like, he wants you to ask for money when like that's an option. Like, I don't know. I don't feel like, from the personal conversations you have with him, from the personal conversations that you have with him, he doesn't even really come off like that big of a dickhead. So it's like, I don't know why he's only satisfied when you're doing things that make you like a total dick. And like, also, like, I don't know, because like, again, I played Fallout 3, so it's like, I know like his backstory of being like one of the children at like Little Lamplight, being like the fucking leader of them or whatever. And it's like, was he an asshole then? Did he like stealing then? Like, what happened? Like, was this part of his character already? Or like, did we just randomly decide like these are the things that he likes doing? Like, he likes lockpicking, but he only likes it every 24 hours instead of every 2 to make it more fucking obnoxious to try and raise his affinity up. I don't know, but he feels like just a really weird element in the first place. And I don't really know what to think of him in that sense. And then there's like I said, Preston is just a little bit like boring, I really think. And then there's Gage, who like, again, I will honestly say I didn't finish Nuka World's DLC, because the funny thing about Nuka World is like, congrats, you played the DLC and you did the storyline. Now the Minutemen hate you and Preston will not speak to you. And it's like, okay, great. So I just made the base game have less content because I did the storyline of the DLC that cost extra when it came out. And that's fucking stupid. I understand that there is a way, basically, if you just like shoot everybody who's a raider in that DLC, like everybody there who's just like evil, and like that's probably honestly like a moral, I don't know if it's the morally good thing to say. I don't know if I want to say that, but I mean, if there was a karma system in the game, I'm sure it would reward me for it, is what I'm saying. The problem then is like, oh, well, congrats, you don't get Gage, then you don't get the new DLC companion. And so it's like, you have to choose like what you want to do with that. It's like, that's dumb. This whole DLC plays into this idea that like because a lot of your dialogue options are just like being like the worst possible person like out of nowhere, and it's like this was not the personality the main character had. And I know to a point you can impart a personality onto them, but ultimately it's like one of those things where your option is like yes, yes, sarcastic, yes, no, is kind of what it boils down to. And like most of the time you're doing things that are helpful and you're enjoying the fact that you're helping, and like even if it's just for money, you are ultimately doing good things. And all of a sudden it's like I love doing bad things even if it's for free, and it's like what the fuck, what do you mean? You haven't done that even once, and you do it even once, and then the Minutemen are like, we hate you now. And it's like, it's weird that the Minutemen will automatically hate you for that, but not for like joining the Institute, which is, I don't even comprehend fully, I think, still exactly what they're doing, but that's all the more reason to maybe be suspicious of them. And it's just a whole problem where it's like, and with Gage, it's like I don't even really know, again, because like, yeah, I could like grind his affinity out without finishing the DLC. I'm sure I could, but I'm not going to do that. I have no interest in doing that. Which is, again, it's like McCready. It's like in the personal conversations, like this seems like an okay person, but likes like vile shit that you have to do. And Strong as well, you have to do vile shit for, but it's like, that was kind of the reason why like I benched Strong as a companion for like a really long time, and then just waited until I got like the like eat corpses fucking perk, the cannibalism perk, and then I just like had him around to do that, then waited 2 hours, and then just grinded it up to see what his companion story even was. And that's the thing too, is like a lot of these characters, it's like if you're trying to play a character, you aren't going to get like affinity with your companion, and that's fine, that's reasonable. But the fact that like playing this DLC out at all is going to make it so like you have to not be playing a character, because if you're trying to play like a good helpful character who wants to do good things, that's just not an option. Like the option is to not interact with the DLC. Basically the option is don't do the quest, don't meet the characters, just clear out the entire place and then just walk around it, which is kind of what you're doing anyway, because the story is like really bare bones. But regardless of that, it's like if you choose to not interact with the DLC, it's like congrats, like you kept your character like in character, but you also didn't experience a majority of like what was added into this DLC. And so you have to choose between, it's like, are you going to like play your character as a character, the character they've been forced to kind of be up to this point, or like are you going to abandon that to actually see the content you paid for? That's fucking dumb. I think that's really dumb. Unrelated to basically the majority of my complaints so far, so the fact that there's a system in game, it's interesting too, and this is, I put in a mod to put this back in, because if you're playing this game, you should really be putting in quality of life mods, just for the sake of it. I really think so. And you should know how to use console commands as well, because that way you don't have to like just be stuck, like you can no clip to like not get stuck trying to enter a terminal that's a little bit too low for you to enter for some reason. One thing I was going to say is like with the companion system, right, you can only ever have one companion with you at a time, and then in New Vegas and Fallout 3, you could have basically like a dog, like an animal companion, or like in New Vegas, like a robot companion too, along with an actual like normal companion who's like a human companion. And that was really cool that you could do that, because it gave you options essentially, and you didn't really need to grind affinity in New Vegas or 3 because it didn't exist. 3, I don't think there are companion stories at all, beyond what is part of the main story of the game. Like Butch is part of the main story, the Brotherhood of Steel is part of the main story, like they're part of it in that sense. In New Vegas though, like I know at least, yeah, pretty much every character I believe has not affinity, but if you take them to certain points in the map, the game is keeping track of where you've taken them or what quests they've been around for, so that you can see a special companion quest line basically, or like get more story about them. So it's interesting that in the games you could have, you know, a dog or robot companion and a human companion. You didn't really need that, but in Fallout 4 I would argue that like, because you want to grind affinity up, because affinity takes so long to get and is based on, it's not based on nothing. Having people around for long enough, they do just gain passive affinity, and then having them around for quest completion, you don't always get a proc for it, but I swear that that does raise affinity. It feels like you have to put in more work, and in the coding of the game, you could have, there's like dog companion coding to have regular human companion and then also animal companion. And so you'd be able to have both at once, and I put in a mod to bring that functionality back into the game, but it doesn't exist. It's ironic in the one game where it's like you want to have, like you want to be working on affinity with someone basically at all times, because you don't get perks from having a companion with you in 4 as you would in like 3 or New Vegas. You get perks at maximum affinity, So you want them with you at all times, and then like Dogmeat doesn't have an affinity gauge, so there's no reason to have him with you. He has less carry weight, and he doesn't give you a perk at any point, so he's a worthless companion once you've met any other companion. However, the thing about it is that that's because he's meant to be a secondary, and it's ironic that in the one game where he can't be a secondary is the one game where like you'd really want him to be, so that you can have your main companion, you can work on their affinity. Basically, if you choose to have Dogmeat with you, like, and there's a whole perk in the perk tree that's like, if you have your dog with you, he can do like extra shit, which like he can do that anyway. It's like he can bite and hold people, and it's like, he already does that, and I don't have that perk. But regardless, maybe it makes it happen more often. I don't know because I didn't take it. But it's clearly meant that, and I don't know if this is on purpose or not, but there's like a Lone Wanderer perk too, where so you get extra benefits for not having any companion with you at all. And it's like, okay, well, one, you're missing out on like actual companion perks that way, which I guess some are more useful than others, to be fair. But and it's weird because again, like Dogmeat doesn't count towards that. You can have him with you and have the Lone Wanderer perk active, and that's really weird to me because the game clearly doesn't see him as a normal companion, but it won't allow you to have him and someone else at the same time. And that's just dumb. That's dumb. This is the only Fallout game where that's the case. I think in Fallout 1 and 2, in Fallout 1 there's a lot less companions you can get in general, but I know in Fallout 2 you can have like an entire party with you. And in Tactics it's based on having an entire party with you, and in both those games it's almost a terrible decision because the AI is so terrible. But the fact is you can, and there's a lot of things you can do in Fallout 1 and 2 that you can't do in later games, but that's neither really here nor there. My point is just being, that's really dumb, and I think I read somewhere where it's like they just disabled it because they were like, oh, well, we can't get it to work, and it's like, well, you still have all these voice lines based on it. Using Stimpaks on Dogmeat still gets affinity up for like the majority of companions, which is just a good additional passive way to get affinity while you're traveling around, like you can't do in base game without modding it. And it's like you have these systems in the game and you have no way for people to access them. Technically speaking, you kind of can, in the sense where if you go into your console commands, you can type a few things and make it happen, but it's really clunky because you have to do it anytime you want to shift your companions in and out, and trading with Dogmeat when you have him set as Dogmeat companion is really difficult too, because you have to open console commands again to do that. But he has less carry weight than everyone else, so I mean, you're probably trading with him less often, but regardless of that, which I've said a million times by now, it's dumb. It's really dumb, and it's stupid, because they were like, oh, this would be helpful, and they just didn't do it. And I have to wonder, again, if maybe Karma and Faction Reputation and Radiant Quests were another part of like, oh, we have this idea, but we can't really do anything with it. Especially because, like, you have to kind of side with a faction to even get into the Institute. It doesn't matter what you actually go with. There's guidebooks that show images and like talk about a route where it's like you just build the thing yourself and you don't side with a faction to get into the Institute. But that's not actually possible in the game, so it's like, what happened? At what point in development did they decide to cut that, and why? Because I feel like it would take less effort. I don't know. There's probably some sorts of dialogue triggers that it matters for, but unsure, honestly. But as far as speaking of perks, because we were talking about that, so holy shit, I hate the systems in Fallout 4 as far as leveling up goes, because the way it worked in Fallout 3 and New Vegas, and don't quote me on it, but I'm pretty sure 1 and 2 as well, is at the start of the game, you have your special stats. You have strength, perception, endurance, special, it's a acronym. And you assign those, you get 40 points, nothing can go under 1, nothing can go over 10, and you assign those, and you essentially live with your choices on that. There's perks in New Vegas that can get you like +1 to this stat or whatever, and Fallout 3 has like a perk you can get late in the game called Almost Perfect, which sets them all to 9. And there's like bobbleheads that if you find them throughout the world gives you a +1. So you can like get 10 in all of them by the end of the game in Fallout 3, but you have to actually have a very specific plan in mind to do that. Because like if you get the bobblehead before, like let's say you have like strength 1 and you get the bobblehead in your strength 2, then you use Almost Perfect, it's like it's still going to be 9, it's not going to be 10. So again, like you have to have, you basically, whatever you choose as your special stats determines your build and your playthrough, and it's really important. In Fallout 4, it's not important. For one thing, I think, or at least it feels like, you get less points. I don't know that for a fact. It definitely felt like it when I was making my character. I felt like I didn't have the ability to do the kind of builds I would normally do. And maybe that's just me, because it's been a little while since I did like a fresh start of like New Vegas or 3. But I know that it doesn't even really matter that much. Because what I would honestly do is like set like charisma to 9, and then maybe set like well, I have to think about this a little bit because it's like I don't remember exactly how many points you work with, but the basic idea that I'm trying to get with, let's not talk about specific point allocations. It's like, okay, a high luck, low intelligence for Idiot Savant, so that you pop that, so you get extra experience. And then honestly, maybe even with like high intelligence anyway, because it pops all the time and intelligence affects your experience gain. But anyway, it doesn't even matter if you do that, because on level up, you can either get a perk or you can increase a special stat on every single level. You get 1 point to do either of those things. And you basically, at some point, are probably going to have 10 in all of them, or at least going to have like very high in all of them, because you need them for perks. And it's like, that was always the case. But the thing was, they weren't listed in such a way where you thought too much about it, and also like you were locked in. Like in New Vegas, if you saw like, oh, I can't get this perk, it needs Endurance 8, and you have like Endurance 6, it's like you're never getting that perk, and you just accept that and you move on, and you pick what you can for the build that you've created. But like in Fallout 4, it's like, oh, well, I need Endurance 8 for this, let me spend like the next 3 levels like amping my endurance, and then I can get it. And it's like, that is not encouraging a build, that's not encouraging commitment to a build at all. That's encouraging like, just get all your special stats capped out, or like not even, because that's probably not even efficient either. It's like, look at what all of the perks in the game are, and then get your special stats exactly there, except for like Charisma, where you should probably have that high because that's the only skill checks in the game. Like in Fallout 3 and New Vegas, and again I want to say in 1 and 2, like there were checks based on a lot of things. Like there were checks based on intelligence, medical, barter. There were a ton of different checks. It was not just flat Charisma. And 3 might have had less of them actually, but I'm pretty sure it did have at least some. Every single check in discussion in Fallout 4 is Charisma. So Charisma now matters significantly more, but even then it doesn't, because New Vegas had a system where it's like, it was a flat rate. You either had enough of a stat to pass a check or you didn't. And then in Fallout 3, it's a percentage-based thing, like it's a roll. Like you could have like, I don't know, like let's say it's a Charisma check and you have like 1, you might still have like a 5% chance of passing the check. The problem with that, especially with Fallout 4 basically, is like you either build high Charisma and never worry about it, because you'll never fail at that point, or you just like build like 0 Charisma and you just reload to get your options. And I can't tell you what perks are on the Charisma tree off the top of my head. I think there are some that are helpful, like there's one about like bartering, but that's like the level 1 Charisma perk. You're going to have that no matter what. So it's a case of like, well, you can do it or you can not do it. But either way, like, you're not committed to anything. Like, in the past, right, like, if you had a low int build, like, you were kind of making the entire game harder for yourself in a lot of different ways, because int affected more things. But just Idiot Savant as well makes int a little bit less relevant, for one thing. And you also, I feel like you just need to level up less, because it doesn't matter as much. Like, you hit an event horizon almost, where it's like, I have all the perks I wanted, and my special stats are good enough, so I'm not worried about what I'm gonna, like, I just started pumping points into shit. Like I was like, I don't care, I'm just gonna put a point somewhere, because there's no level cap as well. So it's like, there's no point where it's like, this is the strongest you ever get, and now you have to face the rest of the game like that. Like you're at this point, like Lonesome Road and fucking Old World Blues and Honest Hearts are all like as easy as they're going to be now. Which, I mean, to be fair, you can make them incredibly easy, but the point is there is a cap to how strong you can possibly get, and there's no cap like that in Fallout 4. You can just get like theoretically you can get everything, but half of the things you can get don't even matter. So it's like, you're gonna be like, if you hit like level 60, let's say, it's like, is there anything else you really need? Like probably not. Like you're probably just putting points into things at that point. You're probably just finishing up things you don't care that much about. And like honestly, even by level 30, you probably have enough of a build for it not to really matter. Like you could probably get through the whole game at that level without it even mattering, which would institute the idea of level cap. But the problem with the level cap is, because you can spend points on perks or special, like you might have spent them all on special and now you have like no perks, which could be like a problem. And then, I don't know, it's just really dumb, I think, to split it that way. And the idea too, where it's like there's no skills, I believe is what they're called. I'm not looking at anything like I've said before. So it's like, you know, some level ups you'd get a perk in like New Vegas and 3, and some level ups you'd get skills. So like basically it'd be like big guns, small guns, barter, medicine, like individual skills that you can be good at that affect a multitude of things, which was really interesting. And now it's like, those don't exist at all. Some of them are rolled into perks. Like I want to say there's a medicine perk. I think it's just called medic, and like all it does is it affects your stim packs, like how much they heal. And there's one check in Far Harbor. There's literally one medicine check in the whole game, and it's DLC. And if you come to it and you don't have medical, or like I think if you have high enough intelligence, you can just pass it too. If you're like, oh, I need to go level up to get my medic 2. is what you need. It's like, oh, sorry, he died. Like, he died already. It doesn't matter. That check's not here anymore. And it's like, well, that's cool that there's a consequence that I didn't do anything. But also, it's like, how the hell was I supposed to know that there would be one check in the entire game based on where my perks are at? Because there aren't any other checks like that. There's no conversational checks like that. They're all charisma-based in conversation, like I've already said. So everything feels like it matters way, way less. Because it's like that thing. It's like, oh, like I'm level 30 in like Fallout New Vegas or whatever. I think that's the level cap actually in base New Vegas. It might be. I don't remember. But like I'm like end game level, and it's like, oh well, you know, I'll put some points into like barter, and like whether or not you're planning on buying and selling, there are like a lot of fucking conversations you can have, where like having a barter skill can help you, and you've probably seen that throughout the game. So you're probably like, oh, I should put some points into that. But it's like, no, there's no indication actually you should put points into medic for this one specific check. And again, like it probably doesn't even matter, because I think it's like an intelligence 7 check. And it's like, if you are just putting your points into special, which I could see being a valid thing to do, you probably have that intelligence already. Depending on when you go there, I guess. But it's like, it's at the top of the map, so you have to have some amount of supplies built up. Problem with Nuka World too, just to like be random, because this whole thing has just been completely random. I was expecting, because I knew it was like, oh, it's you get trapped by raiders to come here. Basically, it's like I was expecting a very much like, oh, hardest part's letting go. Like, you can't bring any of your shit. You have to like acquire on site. And it's like, nah, because it's like, oh, whoa, you like, dude, you ran the gauntlet. Nobody survived that. I bet it was really hard, huh? And it's like, no, it wasn't, because you let me bring my end game shit here. Because I would have theoretically beaten the, like, if I played the game when it came out, I would have beaten the game before doing the DLC. And there's something on it, like in New Vegas, it'll be like, this DLC, your recommended level is this or higher. And it's like, Fallout 4 gives you no indication of anything like that. So it's like, I'm going through this and it's like, there is no challenge left, because I've beaten the entire game and I've created a build that's unstoppable, because it's really easy, really fast to just have everything you want in Fallout 4 and then not care about anything else. And that's like a whole issue in my mind. And another thing too, this is kind of off topic, but another thing too that I just wanted to say was, let's talk about power armor. So power armor is it's just a normal armor that's like really, really strong. It's like the endgame armor in other Fallout games. In Fallout 4, you get one almost instantly. I mean, it kind of depends on what you do, because it is open world, but you're going to be directed basically to a quest that's going to give you one very early on. And there's like a bunch of them throughout the world you might find anyway. But you're going to get one, and you're going to get in it, and it ruins your HUD. It completely ruins it. Everything, no matter what theme color you picked, your HUD is now yellow. Congratulations. It's harder to follow quest markers. Your map is now way too bright. Like your entire Pip-Boy, it is too bright. It is not easy to comprehend what you're looking at, which happens when you're like hidden and invisible as well, and I really hate that. Especially if you're doing like stealth builds or like sniper-based shit, which is what I did a lot of the time. If you try and like check your menu, like, oh, I want to use a healing item, it's like I can't read any of what my options are because I'm fucking invisible right now, and that makes it impossible to read. But another problem with power armor too is like, you're encouraged like, oh, this is going to be like a big fight, you better put on your power armor. Okay, so here's the problem. I did that once. I did it exactly once in Far Harbor for a quest where it's like you fight basically like a bunch of Mirelurks and it leads up to a Mirelurk queen. And I had power armor on, and the problem was she was doing like 40% of my health as damage, and I had no indication of that, because when you're in power armor, you don't have an HP bar anymore. They give you like a little like in-universe little HUD, and it's like a little like gauge basically. And so like, let's say you take a hit, and like the gauge like kind of ticks downward very slowly. So I'm trying to fight this big fuck you enemy who's doing a ton of damage to me, and I have no idea when I need to heal and when I'm fine, because like my health gauge might say 80% and it's slowly ticking down, and then I get hit once and I die, and it's like, oh, I wasn't at 80% of my health, I was at like fucking 60% of my health, and that's the problem right now. And so like you're just having to preemptively use stim packs or like other healing items all the time if you're in power armor and you're fighting an actual tough enemy, and if you don't have a build with high endurance, because at that point I eventually did end up with 10 endurance, and then nothing in the game mattered anymore, and I just walked into enemies. But regardless of that, still, it's like worthless to use, because like I said, quest markers get harder to follow. I can't tell how much damage I've taken if I am in a big fight, because it's ticking down slowly. And it's not like Earthbound rules where it's like, so long as like you heal up before it hits zero, you'll be fine. It's like, no, it's like you're dead even though your health bar said like you had like 60% or like 80% left. It's like, okay, awesome, great, love it. There's also the fact that being in it, like, the game tells you, oh, you don't take radiation damage in this because you're sealed up. Yeah, you do. It's just lowered, and at that point, it's like, well, you can use like fucking like Rad-X and like Radaway, and it's like you're gonna get the same effects anyway. And you're gonna have a better UI to look at it too, because that also looks really funky in the power armor, and I hate that. And it's just, I don't feel like it's worth using as well. Like, it probably gives you more defense, sure, but it's like, skill issue, don't get hit, is what I would say. Basically, there's plenty of ways to initiate and engage in combat in a Fallout game that don't involve getting hit. And if you do, I think by the time that I stopped playing Fallout 4, I had 500 stim packs in my fucking inventory, which weighs 0 unless you're on hardcore mode. So it's like I just have 500 stim packs. So it doesn't matter that it gives me more defense. I'm using the same weapons I'd otherwise be using. I think there are some that are specific to power armor. I wouldn't know because I didn't care, because it's not helpful. It's obnoxious. And it's like, if it were just a normal piece of armor, I maybe would have worn it. I probably would have worn something that looked cooler, honestly. But that's always kind of been the game. Is like you gotta balance. Like, it's interesting, right? Because it's a balance of like fashion and utility. And there's a crafting system here you can put in armor, and it's like a ton of armor is really limited on what you can craft into it. Like it's like the Silver Shroud armor, right? Because I've talked about that a couple times. You can get that upgraded at certain like level thresholds. Basically, there will be certain upgrades available to you. The wiki is also wrong about this, at least as of current, where it says like, oh, if you're above like level 45 or whatever, before you've taken the first one, you won't be able to take it. Yeah, you can, because I didn't even know I could do it until like level 46 because I wasn't paying attention, which is my own fault. But I was like level 46 and I took it and I got like the final upgrade for it. So, but that's the thing, right? Is then like, okay, well, it's got like, you know, it does have really high defense, but not very high radiation defense, or might not be radiation, might be like, I don't remember what the actual names are, like electricity damage, whatever it is. And so it's like, oh, go to a crafting bench. What can I put on it? Nothing. I can't edit it. And it's like, that's really weird, because the Railroad gave me this ballistic weave and they said, oh, it's this like polymer you can put onto clothing to like make its defense better. And it's like, well, that's awful fucking weird that I can't just put that on anything, because from the way that you talked about it, it sounds like I should be able to just apply it to like clothes. And you can buy clothes that have it applied to it in the Railroad headquarters. But like, it's like, oh, well, those clothes are different. And it's like, well, this isn't really very free crafting then. And I get pissed too at like, okay, like there was like a walking cane. I was like, that's kind of a fun melee weapon. I don't do melee combat, but like I'll keep that around. But what can I craft onto it? Like nothing. It's like two things that aren't very helpful and don't make it very good. And there's just straight up objectively better options. And it's like, okay, awesome. So this is like worthless then. Why is this even a thing I can use? Because it's not helpful. And there's a whole lot of weapons like that, honestly, where it's like, oh, this is like my 80th 10mm pistol that I found. Your weapons don't have durability in this game. Like, you could, I guess, scrap 79 of them, but like, here's the thing. They're part of your carry weight, so it's like, I don't even want to carry this around because it's worthless, and I have plenty of crafting materials as it is, because the crafting system in the game, I don't really like to interact with all that much anyway, beyond what I have to. And even then, it's like, are you fucking picking up guns to dismantle for the crafting system when there's junk everywhere you can just dismantle instead? Like, that doesn't logic out to me. So it's like, what's the point of giving me all these things? And like, they all have the exact same customization options, and ultimately, they're probably worse than if you were to find like what is basically a 10mm pistol. It might have the name like the Fuckenizer or some stupid shit, and has some special effect on it that you can't impart onto those other ones you found. So it's like, that one is just better than your 79 regular 10mm pistols at that point. And it's like, well, there's no point then, is there? So it's like, why do you keep having these drop? Why are these lootable? I can't do anything with this. It's not helpful. In New Vegas, you pick up weapons all the time because you have the ones you like, and then like you like sacrifice the ones you're not using to make your weapon you like better. And I think too, I want to say in New Vegas you can craft ammo, which you can't do in 4. And it's like, okay, well, that's kind of dumb, because like I have like 3 fucking thousand 10mm bullets I can't do anything with, because that's just objectively not a good type of gun. There's no gun in the game that uses those bullets that's all that helpful. That's not entirely fair. There's some that have like niche uses, but it's like, okay, I just have things that are 10 times better because I can just shoot once and things die. And it doesn't even take that far into the game to get things that are doing that, really. So you just have all this worthless shit. And like, the crafting system as a whole is just worthless shit. It's a worthless shit simulator. Like, there is no reason. And I tried actually once to interact with the crafting system, like in Vault 88. I tried to like be like, oh, I'll build this up to look like presentable. It's not just going to be like a fucking like dirty like a ground floor or nothing else. I tried to build like an actual habitat, an actual like space, like build onto the vault, make it all look like it's all one thing. It was like fucking impossible, because everything clicks to each other in really weird ways. It doesn't all line up right. It takes a bunch of resources to do, and those resources are also used for crafting, which is just actively helpful to do instead of this like stupid shit that doesn't get you anything. it's just, and I mean, to be fair, like, depending on what weapons and armor you're using, you're actually not crafting, so you're not using any of this junk you're picking up anyways, so you're picking up a ton of garbage, or you're ignoring a bunch of garbage that drops. Either way, it's worthless. It is just worthless. And it's funny too, because your companions will always tell you that. I think Longfellow is the only companion in the game who consistently will tell you, like, oh, pick up anything that you think might be useful. We can always find a use for it. Every other companion is like, why are you picking up garbage? Why are you picking up garbage? We don't need garbage. Stop picking up garbage. I dislike that you picked that up. And it's like, shut the fuck up for 3 fucking seconds, please, because I apparently need all this shit so I can build some stupid shit to advance the storyline. And it's like, it's really bad. And the fact that Far Harbor 2 incorporates it into one of its puzzles really punished the fuck out of me, because I didn't know you could hit tab to store an item and then put it down somewhere else later, because I didn't interact with crafting enough, and nothing in crafting tells you that. So that took me way longer than it should have, because the game, it didn't even tell me how to craft, didn't tell me the limitations of it. There's no tutorial on it, other than like, we need you to build this thing and put it somewhere. And it's like, that's stupid and dumb. Here you go. Okay, the quest is done. Awful, I hate it. And let me think, I'm thinking of if there's anything else, because that really covers a lot of it. I might have touched on this, that the Institute I have no fucking clue what their actual goals are. It's stupid and it's dumb, and it doesn't make any sense as a faction, especially as like the big bad, basically, of the game. Where it's like, you have like Father, who's like Sean, and he's like, synths aren't people, and it's like, why'd you let them think and feel? And it's weird, because multiple people in the Institute will like be like, hey, it's weird that they can think and feel, and we don't treat them as people. And you'll like get this dialogue where they're like, you can't say that, you'll get in trouble. And it's like, from who? And it's like, from who? I presume Sean, but it's like, Sean created like a child version of himself for like the main character to raise. And I use the word raise very loosely, because like, congrats, you just created like someone who like has a Peter Pan situation where they're never going to be able to grow up. So it's like, there's no raising involved here. They will always be a child, and that's going to be a problem eventually. And it's weird because he's like, oh, well, I want you to learn to love him and treat him as family, but also like, synths aren't people and we shouldn't love them, and they're just for labor. And it's like, if they're just for labor, why the fuck did you like give them emotions and shit? Like, it doesn't even make sense. And then it's weird too, because it's like, 2 out of 4 of the factions in the game are like these things that think, feel, hear, and speak exactly the same as normal people aren't people and do not deserve rights. And it's like, okay, well, I'm clearly meant to disagree with that. Why are there 2 different fucking factions trying to convince me very poorly that would even be the case? It's like one of those things where it's like, Caesar's Legion in New Vegas is like objectively evil, but like, you talk to them and they at least have reasoning, and the reasoning is flawed and shows that like, clearly Caesar read one book, exactly one, and only kind of understood it. And that's the whole big problem there. And that's the funny, is like, in his mind he's doing something helpful, but like, it's not even helpful by his own standards, because he doesn't know enough about what he's talking about. But in the Institute's case, and like in the Brotherhood's case, it's like, they give you no argument. They're like, oh, well, synths aren't people, and like, if there's more of them than people, that might be a problem for people. And it's like, well, question 1, why would that be? Are you saying that like, are minorities like treated bad or something? And it's like, yeah, fucking okay. And it's like, I guess that's maybe a like political point you're supposed to think about in those circumstances. Maybe not. I have no idea if Bethesda was that smart about it, but they're just trying to convince you this, but they have no logic. There's absolutely no logical backing or reasoning to any of it. And yet, like, again, 2 out of 4 of the factions that you're speaking to in the entire game just think this. They just think this, no holds barred. There's no changing their mind about it. But that's things they don't even, because Sean will be like, synths aren't people, and you'll get to the end of the game, and you can save like the little synth Sean, and he'll give you this holotape, and he'll be like, I want you to raise this synth, this boy. And it's like, it's funny because like, there's earlier moments in the writing, like foreshadowing, where like somebody else is like, oh, this like doctor who works on like synth Sean refers to him as like a boy, so he's a real person. And like, you're supposed to see that as like, oh, Father now like sees synths as people. And it's like, okay, well, that's fucking too little too late, for one thing. But also like, it's weird that like, he just does a complete 180 as soon as like the quest is resolved and he's off screen and it doesn't matter anymore. And it's just very, very, very strange. And it's just very clear that it doesn't make any sense, because it's like, well, what? You are the leader of the Institute, and you clearly think, at least at some point, or to some extent, that synths are people, or at the very least, as fucked up as it is, thinks that they can substitute for family members. Because there's another too you can find where it's like, this guy's wife is dead, I'm the synth to replace her. And so it's like you're clearly thinking that these creatures, if you're not going to call them human, whatever you want to call them at that point, are capable of expressing emotion. But you're like, oh, but we should still be like allowed to enslave them. And it's like, whenever people say like, hey, they express like emotion and they're people, it's like everyone's like, you're gonna get in trouble, you're gonna get in trouble. And it's like, if Sean also thinks that, who the fuck are they gonna get in trouble with? And it's like, if he thinks that, why does he sometimes also pretend not to think that? Like, who is he hiding this motivation from? It doesn't make sense. It's very underbaked. And it's just like, why even I think they try to do factions, because you can argue in Fallout 3 there's factions in the sense there's like Enclave and Brotherhood, but there's really not factions, because like you end up helping the Brotherhood and like destroying the Enclave one way or another. And like Fallout 4, it's like they were like, oh, people like that New Vegas had factions, we'll have factions. And it's like, these factions don't have logical reasoning, they don't make any sense. Like, the Brotherhood doesn't make logical sense, but it's in a way that makes sense for the Brotherhood in canon to think that way, because they're not a fucking logical institution, and half of the time they just actively do things that make everybody's life worse. So sure, I guess that's fine, but you have the Institute where it's like they talk about wanting to make humanity better, and then it's like, what does that even really mean? Like, they have a mission statement, but it's such a vague mission statement that it doesn't mean anything, and it's really contradictory to itself, because it's like, why is there like a quest where Sean is like, we should like tell the people on the surface not to fear us, but also like, I think they should all die, they're all like a cesspool. And it's like, yet again, and it's like, these are Sean's opinions, right? So I could maybe make the argument he doesn't represent the thinking of the Institute as a whole, but for one, he's their leader, so yes, he does. And for two, it's like, it feels like the base beliefs of the Institute, based on what I got out of the game, is they don't think synths are people, and they think that the surface is doomed. So why is their leader sending me on quests to make a radio broadcast to the surface saying, hi, we're the Institute, we don't worry about it? Because it's like, for one thing, anyone could have done that at any point up to this point. Like, the Institute, I think, has been going on for like the better part of the last 200 years of the game's like lore. And it's really weird too that like these are even decisions that are even being discussed, because like Fallout 3 actually already decided that, since like in Fallout 3 there's at least one quest line where it's like, you find like a guy who's a synth and you're told what that is, and like if you bring him back to like his owner or whatever, quote unquote, that's a bad karma thing to do, and if you free him, that's a good karma thing to do. So we've already decided that it's the Bethesda itself already decided it's morally wrong to not treat synths as people. So it's like, it's weird, because it's like the game's already told you this, and then the Brotherhood is also considered karmically good in Fallout 3, and so it's like there's this weird like thing where I guess what's even the argument to be made? There's no argument to be made, because like their motivations don't make sense, and it's like, at least the Brotherhoods, like I said, don't make sense in a way that makes sense. You know, figure that sentence out. The Institute just doesn't. It doesn't make any sense, because like, oh, we're the good guys here. We have no moral issues. And I guess, to be fair, it's not like they can see the fucking karma system. So I guess maybe they don't know that the game is actively telling you these things. But it's just really weird, and it's self-contradictory, and it's like, I have no actual idea. Because it's like, let's say the Institute, because like, I'm not going to go back and like get the Institute ending. It's like, where do we go from here? Like, what are they even doing? Like, they're continuing to live underground and just do shit and like not really interact with the surface unless they need to siphon something from them. So it's, what was even the point of like being like, we're gonna like play nice with the surface or whatever? Because they don't even mean that. And again, it's not even like, oh, because like Brotherhood of Steel, you'll notice I'm like not talking about complaints with them, because it's like, I think they are evil, here is why they are evil. It makes sense if you want to see that path of the game. That is a story path that was, I'm gonna say, thought out to the extent that any Fallout 4 story path is thought out. The Institute is just not, and it's like the main crux of the game, and it's dumb and it's stupid, and I hate that. And I think that's literally everything I had to say, and I've been speaking for over an hour about just things I did not like about this game. Things that were good about this game. It has mods. It has mods and console commands. Never play a Fallout game on a console. I'll fucking say that, because I couldn't imagine. There's just times when shit breaks, and it's like, well, let me fix that myself. Or times when it's like, oh, the game crashed, I'm just going to fucking get myself back there, path of least resistance. Things like that. Those are like normal Fallout problems, but like I was trying to think of like positives for 4, and I ended up just saying like, well, here's a problem that has a solution, but like it's in the other games too. Like I said, some of the companions are really well written. Some of the quest lines are interesting. Usually the side quests, honestly. I don't think any of the factions have a particularly interesting main story. God, what else? Far Harbor is really good, like I was saying. I think that actually the fucking factions in Far Harbor have reasonings that make sense, even when they're like wrong, or like common sense tells you, hey, this is really stupid. They at least have a reasoning, and you can make choices. And it's like the guy who wrote that, I think the guy who was in charge of writing this actually, like, has passed away. Because I think I know who it is, but I'm not sure, so I'm not gonna say a name because I couldn't even think of the name off the top of my head anyway. But it's like, well, that guy like knew how to fucking write factions, and like, again, there's still no faction reputation, unfortunately. You can still kind of just do whatever and like help whoever you want. Like, it's not a problem. But at the very least, there's to some extent in-universe explanation for doing that. Like, oh, like if you want to like get to Acadia, like Acadia tries to be friends with Far Harbor and the Children of Adam, who are like diametrically opposed. So like it kind of makes sense for you to be like helping everyone to a degree. Again, like pretty much any of my compliment is just like Far Harbor is good. Far Harbor has interesting characters and story, and like the quests feel like, even the quests where it's like I'd say they're like half radiant, I'd call them like interesting and important. It's like there's like 3 different times you upgrade like the armor of the harbor itself, and I would say that is it's a repetitive task in a sense, but you get more story every time, and there's a reason you're doing it, and it makes sense to do it. You don't really see the changes as far as I ever noticed, but I mean, hey, you can't have everything. Otherwise, I think that God, positives about Fallout 4. I like that you can, again, like this is positive, but it's a caveat. You can decide what armor and weapon your companion is using. And in New Vegas and 3, they would just pick whatever. Like if you gave, like Veronica's always asking for a dress, right? You can give her a dress, but she'll never equip it because dresses don't have combat stats, basically. Or like if they do, they're very marginal. So like you can give her one and she'll be like, wow, I'm so glad to have this. She'll never wear it though. And it's like in Fallout 4, you can be like, hey, Curie, I have this dress and that's what you're wearing now. And they just will wear what you asked them to. And you can tell them to equip a weapon, but I feel like they don't always listen. So they need ammo to use a weapon for one thing. I think that's consistent across every Fallout game. Like they have a default weapon that they can use without using ammo, but otherwise they need ammo for it. And it's interesting because there was a point where Nick was, I just put like a Tesla cannon in his fucking inventory because I didn't have the space for it. And like I look over like 2 seconds later and he's fucking, I see this giant blast and he's fucking equipped with the damn thing. It's like, well, I didn't ask you to equip that, but like I guess somewhere he found the ammo for it, or like I gave him it and forgot. And so he just started using it of his own volition. So like even then, you don't actually have control over what weapons they're using. They will still, like, if they have the ammo for a weapon that's better than what they're using, they will use that. It seems, at least, because again, I didn't tell him to use that, and he just decided to. So it seems to be that that's the case. Other positives is that I want to say it crashes less than 3 in New Vegas, but that's kind of a lie, because even with no mods, specifically to even start the game up, what I have to do is I have to play in full screen, otherwise it will be a very, like, I can't play in borderless window because it doesn't seem to understand what my screen dimensions are when I do that, so I have to be in full screen. And when I start the game from the launcher, it doesn't become the main window. I have to click into it, and if I click into it right away, it will crash. I have to wait for the game to start showing one of the like little preview animation things it has, and then click into it, and then skip that, and then I can play the game without it crashing. Also, it just crashes randomly, and I don't know why. I understand when I get random crashes in New Vegas and 3, I generally have like a kind of idea of why it's doing that, because I understand the memory problems that those games have, and I understand like, well, this probably triggered it, and I can try not to do the same thing again, or at least like do different shit around that. Like I understand, like if you don't fast travel in New Vegas and you walk everywhere and you keep like just opening doors, you're gonna eventually like run out of memory and it's gonna crash. In Fallout 4 it would crash, and I just like, I don't know why it's doing that. Fallout 4 also ties loading times to FPS. So I think FPS in Fallout 4, I think it's just uncapped, and I don't think there's anything you can do to change that. Problem with that is in gameplay, like enemy speed is based on FPS, and like the speed at which they talk as well. Not enemies, I mean to enemies too, I guess. The speed at which anyone talks gets totally fucking desynced by your FPS. But then so it's like, okay, cap my FPS at like 60. Okay, your loading times are now longer because the loading is somehow related to FPS. So I had to install a mod that uncaps my FPS during loading and caps it again during gameplay. And it's like, that is so stupid and bad. I was supposed to be complimenting. I don't know how I ended up on this. I have no idea how I ended up on that. I was supposed to be thinking of compliments, and I ended up with another complaint. I guess at that point I'll just stop talking. Because like the thing is, I did have fun until it didn't go anywhere. Like I had fun playing the game, and then I got to the ending, and it's like, oh, we're not going to talk about anything you did. None of it really matters. Go do some more Radiant quests, as though like you didn't dispute the game. Like it's like here's DLC that actively interferes with like one of the main fucking factions of the main game. So all right, great. It's like I did have fun, but I'm very much so done, and I have no desire to replay it. It's like I could try a different build, and it's like, not really, because they're all going to end the same. I could side with a different like faction, like okay, it's not going to matter. You're going to do the same thing, and then like you're going to have like no ending credits, you're going to have no epilogue, and you're just going to like go do Radiant quests for them if anything after that. Okay, cool. I did all the companion affinity in one run, and maybe that's why it's so obnoxious. It's like to try and give replay value, I guess, or like something to do in post game. It's like I already did basically all of them. It's like McCready and Preston engaged are the ones I didn't finish because I didn't care, and they didn't have any real easy way. Because McCready, Gage probably has easy ways because I think he likes stealing, but regardless, I didn't finish Nuka World. So yeah, and then Preston, it's like I thought he was boring, and then McCready, it's like I can use lockpicking there too, but I have to wait 24 hours each fucking lockpick for that to work for him, and I'm not putting in that extra fucking work. So yeah, it's like I have no reason to ever come back to the game. I thought it was good. I thought it was fun. I guess I don't know if I thought it was good. I had fun playing it in a lesser way than 3 or New Vegas. I think that the nuances of how things affect each other in 3 and New Vegas is way better. 76, I don't know anything about other than that it was really bad on launch and it's gotten better and has a fucking battle pass to get companions, and it's like I'm absolutely never fucking playing that. I'm not touching that. I'm not paying for that. That sounds really stupid, and I'm not dealing with it. So yeah, I didn't like Fallout 4 at the end of the day enough to want to make this fucking rant here about all this stupid shit that I just didn't like. And I tried to think of positives, and I failed to really think of any big positives to the game. I mean, like I said, some companions are good, Far Harbor's good. I will not say otherwise on that, and I do think those were, I guess, maybe what made it fun, maybe made it worth seeing through. I don't know. Because I wouldn't say like I wasted my time playing it. I wouldn't say, oh, I wish I hadn't played it. But I will say I'm probably not ever going to play it again, and I don't think it's very good. So that's my fucking hour-long ramble about fucking Fallout 4 shit that I didn't like. Yeah, I don't know how to end this because it was just a ramble. So, fucking bye.